Deep dives and blue skies. Welcome back to Talking Blue with Nick, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talking Blue, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you could find. I'm your host, Nick. You are listening to episode 105 of Talking Blue. We are here today to recap the Twins series. Dodgers swept the Twins, but mainly what we're going to do is talk about the Dodgers and where they stand at the halfway point. The Dodgers have officially played 81 games, which is, for those math people out there, which I am not one of them, that is half of 162 the full season. So we have officially watched one half of the Dodgers 2026 seasons. So basically, I'm going to go over a ton of things today. Quickly, I will recap the Twins series. It will not be as what I normally do. It'll be very quick, only a couple minutes, just go through each game, just super quick, just talk about which happened. And then I'm going to talk about a ton of things to kind of like give my thoughts on what we've seen so far. I'm going to give my thoughts on the team overall, like the pitching, the lineup, all that kind of stuff. And then we're going to go into individual players, like biggest surprises, biggest disappointments, expectations. Just give my thoughts overall of what we've watched, these 81 games, basically. All right. So as always, you get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of the videos dropping. For those of you who are real video YouTube fans who love short clips, you can go over to my YouTube channel, Talkin' Blue Pod. I dropped a couple just regular YouTube videos, nothing podcast related, 3 or 4 minute clips talking about Shohei Ohtani, Kike Hernandez. Keep an eye on for my next video, which will be talking about Mookie Betts. Just giving some, breakdown of some things. Ohtani's incredible season that we're in the midst of watching. Kike Hernandez, the unique story of him, how he's kind of always been a basically league average player in the regular season, but one of the greatest postseason performers ever. So just if you're into that kind of stuff, you can go over and watch that Baseball Mondays podcast that I do. Also have another video very similar to Jacob Mizorowski if you're interested in that and how dominant he is. So, yeah. You can also follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod. You can follow myself at Nick Talking Blue Pod. At Nick Talking Ball. All right, so let's go ahead and before we get into these 3 games, I just want to do some roster stuff. I haven't talked to you guys in a week. Last time I talked to you guys was at the end of the last sweep, which was the Rays. Then the Dodgers actually lost 2 out of 3 against the Orioles. I just wasn't, unfortunately. I've had a lot going on lately, so I wasn't able to get on here and recap it. So I'm so glad to get on here and do this. But there has been some injury roster stuff since we last spoke. So at the very top, Kyle Tucker. All right, he was pulled in, I believe it was Monday's game. It was like the second inning. Back spasms. All right, he walked and then went first to second on a base hit. Was immediately pulled, looked uncomfortable. I really don't know what to make of it now. Dodger fans love to make fun of Dave Roberts because he always will say how something does not seem like it's a big deal and a player will end up going on the IL. Just one of those unfortunate things. It's not just a Dodger thing. I promise you guys, if you're just Dodger fans, every fan base has to deal with this, and almost every manager organization does the same thing. They're always going to be optimistic at first. They're not going to come on and just be like, yeah, we think his season's done, man. Like, they have to get imaging. They have to see how it plays out. They really can't, diagnose everything in that first interview right after the game. So I'm hopeful. Tucker seemed to say, it's not a big deal, and he's not Dave Roberts, who always says that, regardless of the injury. He says he's dealt with it before. It seems like they shut him down for precautionary reasons. I think he'll be okay. I'm hopeful that he will be in there Friday in San Diego in the lineup. But we'll see. A reason why he could not and maybe go on the IL is because of this guy, Teoscar Hernandez, who could actually come off the IL and join the Dodgers. That's why I'm a little scared. Like I've talked about this before, whenever the Dodgers, are kind of in that gray area, should we IL a guy, should we not? If they have another guy coming off the IL, I could just see in their brains thinking, hey, well, we're going to lose Tucker, but let's bring up Teoscar. So Teoscar over the weekend, or over this week, 2 home runs during his rehab assignment. He could be activated this weekend in San Diego. I actually wouldn't be surprised if he's activated Friday afternoon. They could wait a couple days, but we'll see. But I would imagine that he's going to be activated during the series. Will Smith, All right, still not much of an update on him with his stiff neck. Dalton Rushing and Chucky Robinson getting a ton of playing time as of late. Could be activated in a week during the next homestand. That is what it looks like right now. Dodgers will play in San Diego this weekend. They will actually go up to Sacramento to play the A's the upcoming week, and then 4th of July weekend probably was when we'll see Will Smith activated on that homestand. Tyler Glasnow, let's keep it moving. Still dealing with the back, still not currently throwing, not really sure what's going on with him. Literally zero updates. My hopeful positive spin is that they are just basically trying to recreate exactly what happened a year ago with Glasnow, where he came back in like mid-July and was healthy and good down the stretch. July, August, September, and he was great into the postseason. Maybe they're just trying to recreate that, but the fact that he's not throwing and he just continues to have like setbacks, or not even setbacks, like he just hasn't had nothing has gotten going. I don't really know what to make of that, but I still think he'll be back at some point in this year. It's just we have no idea when. Blake Trinan, all right, he was placed on the IL with right elbow inflammation. The scans and everything showed that there was no structural damage. It's just wear and tear. So, again, never know where the injuries are going to take us, but hopefully at the end of the 15-day IL, he can be activated. And then two of the long-term guys who got surgery performed, Snell and Diaz, Edwin Diaz. He threw a 15-pitch bullpen as he continues to ramp up since having the bone chips. And then same thing, Blake Snell. He is expected to throw a 15-pitch bullpen tomorrow on Friday, June 26th. Okay, so all the injury stuff, there is a ton. I actually skipped over Tommy Edman. Actually, I did not. He was already activated a week ago, and he's been playing very good. And Brock Stewart, that's who I skipped over, not Tommy Edman. Brock Stewart was activated against the Twins Monday, and he's made a couple appearances, has actually looked pretty good. All right, so let's just do these three games really quick. Game 1, Monday, Will Klein got the start. Eric Lauer came out of the bullpen, taking on Zebby Matthews of the Twins. All right, again, not going to go through each game today because I want to do these quick. So the Dodgers got the win, 2-1. They rode 2 solo home runs to victory. It was Shohei Ohtani, the first batter of the game, and then later on in the 6th inning, Freddie Freeman hit a solo home run to make it, like I said, a 2-1 game. Will Klein was the opener, pitched 1 inning, did give up an earned run. That was a home run, I believe, to Buxton. Eric Lauer came out of the pen, 6 innings, no earned runs. He lowers his ERA to, I believe, something in the low 3s since he's joined the Dodgers. Kyle Hurt, Tanner Scott, they close it out. Hurt in the 8th, and then Scott in the 9th to get his 10th save to get the win. A nice 1-run win from the Dodgers. Not a ton of offense. I mean, they did have 9 hits, but obviously they left some guys on base. And like I said, they just rode those 2 solo home runs to victory. Some great pitching. Only allowed 3 hits to the Twins. Let's go to game 2. This was Justin Robleski taking on Kendry Rojas, the rookie left-handed pitcher of the Twins. Not a 1-run game in this game. Dodgers win by a score of 12-3. All right, Justin Robleski, 7 innings pitched, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. Did allow a home run, but he gets his 9th win of the year, and he lowers his ERA to 2.71. I will talk about him in a minute as part of my thoughts on everything we've seen from these first 81 games. Edgardo Henriquez also pitched out of the pen, and then this is where we got to see Brock Stewart. Did allow an earned run, but the Dodgers, like I said, were able to come away with a 12-3 victory. Andy Paz had a nice 3-hit game. Freddie Freeman, 3 more hits. Mookie Betts had 2 hits. And then, like I said, a couple other guys. Muncy, Alex Call hit a home run, his first of the year in this game in his hometown coming, I believe. So that's pretty interesting. Kyle Freeland, and then Chucky Robinson, shout out to him. He gets his first 2 hits since like 2023 or something like that. So Dodgers get the series win, and they are going for the sweep Wednesday afternoon. Shohei Ohtani's on the mound versus Joe Ryan, who's one of the more underrated right-handed pitchers in the game. Shohei is in the lineup for this game. It's always news, is Shohei going to pitch and hit and pitch on his start days. The Dodgers won this game by a score of 4-3, another 1-run victory, so they do get the sweep. Shohei Ohtani goes 6 innings pitched, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts. All right, Twins were able to get to him in like the 2nd, 3rd inning, but after that he was able to lock it down, 8 strikeouts. He had 20 whiffs in the game. Looked pretty solid. The knee has looked better. Didn't have any blister injuries. We got to see Kyle Hurt pitch some high leverage. I'm going to talk about him as well. Alex Vesia for one. And then Tanner Scott came in again to get his 11th save. He lowers his ERA to 2.18. Ohtani's ERA is 1.58. He continued. He kind of put to bed his struggles on the mound. I mean, it wasn't an overall outstanding performance, but, he has done things a little bit differently. For so long, Shohei's really relied on his fastball and his sweeper. Did kind of really mix it up in this start. A lot more splitters, even some sinkers, some curveballs. So as a little less of the just 2-pitch mix and more of his deep repertoire that he normally has. Kind of very reminiscent of Yu Darvish, who throws a lot of pitches. Him and Yamamoto, a lot of Japanese pitchers are like that. Ohtani has the ability to throw a ton of pitches, but as this year has progressed, he's kind of just relied on 2 pitches with occasional splitters and stuff like that. So that's how he did it in this game. Mookie Betts had a very big game, and we'll talk about him as well. He had 3 hits. This was probably his best game of the year. He made a couple of very, very nice plays on the field defensively, saving a couple runs. Spinning throws, sliding plays. He homered his first at-bat, his 300th career home runs. Congrats to Mookie Betts. Like I said, I'm probably going to make a video on Mookie Betts soon, talking about some stuff, so stay tuned for that. But his 300th career home run makes him just the 3rd player in baseball history to have 300 or more home runs listed at 5'9" or shorter. Mel Ott, who has 500 career home runs. Yogi Berra, who has more than 300, but I think less than 400. And now Mookie Betts. So one of the only players in baseball history to be that undersized, but still hit for that amount of power. So like I said, he got 3 hits. He has actually raised his OPS to 705. I'm going to talk about his hot stretch. But last 2 to 3 weeks, really in the month of June, he has looked much better and making me feel a lot better about him. So that's the 3 games. And let's get into really what we're going to talk about today, where the Dodgers stand at the exact halfway mark. All right, so like I said, 81 games. So let's go with the team overall first before we get into some individual stuff. They are 52-29. That is the best record in baseball. Obviously, they are first place in the NL West, 9 games up on the San Diego Padres. All right, so I saw this the other day. I should have, this is my bad. I should have, had this on my computer, but I saw the comparison to the previous years where the Dodgers stand 81 games throughout the regular season, and it's all very similar. They pretty much through 81 games are always have 52 wins, 50 wins, 51. I think they only have 3 more wins than they did a year ago. It actually 52-29 ties the same amount of wins that they had during the 2022 season where they won 111 games. So we're at an interesting point right now with the Dodgers because if you go back exactly a year ago, they had a very similar team. Now, they did have a lot more injuries, especially in the starting rotation, but in terms of the record, incredible offense, all that kind of stuff, it was a very similar team. And then what we saw proceed after that was a really, really bad stretch, really all the way until the end of the year. They just kind of played 500 ball, only ended up winning 93 games, which I know for a lot of teams is very, very good. But for the Dodgers, that's a team that wins 88 games, 87 wins, and sneaks into the postseason. That's the feel you get for some teams. That's what the Dodgers do when they win 93 games. It's oh, they only won 93 games. I know that some fans will be please shut up because we never get to see our teams in the postseason. But that's the standard that the Dodgers create. I mean, there was a point in time where they used to average 104 wins a year. So this is one of those moments where, we're about to turn the calendar to July. June just flew by so quick, and that's just how the season goes. We're going to turn the calendar to July very quick, and, this is one of those, I'm not sure what the wording is, but, crossroad times for the Dodgers where, the last 2 years, it's funny because the last 2 years they've kind of not had crazy hot summers, played really great in the months of July and August into September. But ironically, what has happened those last 2 years? They won the World Series. So I don't think as a whole the organization really cares too much about we got to dominate the summer. Obviously, you always want to win games and play good and win the division and all that stuff. But I think that they've kind of seen we really want to peak going into the playoffs and be healthy and all that stuff. But as a fan, nothing is more fun than a Dodgers regular season where they are super hot in the summer. Famously, 2017, 2019, 2021, they were very good. 2022, when they had the season what's the word I'm looking for? Franchise record, 111 wins. They were incredible in the summer, so I would love to see that right now. That would be super fun. I hope this doesn't, like I said last year, it was like early July is when the struggles began. So something to keep an eye out right now, as the Dodgers have played pretty well as of late. And like I said, 52-29, best record in baseball. They have passed the Braves. They have a better record than the Yankees, better than the Tampa Bay Rays, better than the Brewers, all those kind of teams. So looking very, very good as of late. And anytime you could like get over 60 wins basically before the All-Star break, you know that you're in very, very good shape. It looks like they're going to do that because we still got like 3 weeks to go, I believe. So anyways, let's get into the offense. All right, so we're going to talk about the offense, the starting pitching, and then the bullpen. Like I said, before we get into individual stuff. So this is still like the team stuff as a whole. So they've definitely been the best offensive team in baseball. All right, there have been stretches throughout the year where the Yankees have had a little better numbers, the Braves. But right now, they have the best offense in baseball, and they have been, basically all year. So they are first in batting average, on base, slug, OPS, and weighted runs created plus. So basically the entire slash line, average, on base, slug, and OPS. They are first in all of those categories, tied for first in runs scored with the Washington Nationals, and then third in home runs behind the Yankees and White Sox. All right. They have the fourth highest walk rate, and this is a little bit surprising, the fifth lowest strikeout rate. The Dodgers do tend to not necessarily lead the lead in strikeouts, but it's not uncommon for them to be like 10 highest strikeout rates. Sometimes they have guys that will strike out, but right now they're walking at their normal rate, top 5 in the league, and now they're striking out at a bottom 5 rate. So that's great. Less strikeouts is great. The strikeout rate is up from 12th lowest last year to now 5th lowest. All right. Of all 10 teams in baseball, the 10 lowest strikeout rates, all those teams, so like the Rays, the Blue Jays, those teams, the Marlins who put the ball in play and don't strike out, them and the Braves are the only teams that are top 10 in slug. So bottom 10 in strikeout rate, top 10 in slug. So like I said, most teams that put the ball in play a lot and don't strike out don't necessarily hit a lot of home runs. But the Dodgers and the Braves have been the only two teams that are not striking out, and they are still hitting for slug, extra base hits, home runs. So that's a great recipe to have the best offense in the game. All right, so like I said, an elite combo of power but not striking out. The lineup has been great, even with some guys like Kyle Tucker, Mookie Betts, who have struggled at times. Teoscar Hernandez, Will Smith are currently injured. Kike Hernandez, the lineup has been very good, and we're going to talk about all those guys. Starting pitching, all right, it has been great, as expected, despite dealing with a couple of injuries. All right, so even with guys like Snell and Glasnow being on the IL, they still have been one of the better starting pitching teams in the league. And if you would have asked me going into the year, this would have been my guess for their strength. All right, second in team ERA, and this is all starting pitching, not overall pitching, starting pitching ranks. Second in team ERA, first in WHIP, first in batting average against with the third lowest walk rate, sixth in strikeout rate. Some of their strikeout numbers have been dinged because of those injuries. When you lose Glasnow and Snell, those are two major swing and miss pitchers. And then obviously more innings of Justin Robleski, who's one of the worst, who has one of the lower strikeout rates in the game. Sasaki for a lot of the year didn't have a great strikeout rate. He does now. Yamamoto's strikeout rate has actually dropped from where it was a year ago. So really the strikeouts come from like Ohtani, Emmett Sheehan, a little bit of Sasaki, a little bit of Yamamoto. So not as much a ton of swing and miss or strikeouts from the starting pitching, but obviously still top 10, sixth overall. Eventually, when Glasnow and Snell will come back, I bet those numbers will improve. So the rotation's been great, even with some injuries, but not as much as we've seen in the past. They basically have just had 2 injuries, so hopefully we can, continue to see that. We want to see Ohtani, Yamamoto, healthy, Sasaki, all these guys. It's really just been Glasnow and Snell, thankfully. So hopefully it doesn't get any worse, but definitely better from a year ago where they had a lot of injuries. All right, and they had to rely on a lot of the season was Dustin May and Emmett Sheehan, who eventually when he came back, and basically Yamamoto. After that, it was a ton of injuries. At times, the bullpen has been inconsistent, but overall, I think it's been pretty solid. All right, so 10th in bullpen ERA. They are third in batting average against, fourth in WHIP and FIP, second in strikeout rate, and third in K per nine. All right. 1 year ago, the bullpen was tied for sixth most home runs allowed, and they led the league in innings pitched. Right now, they have the fourth least amount of home runs, and they've pitched the least amount of innings. Two numbers that I promise you will be so big for the Dodgers. Not allowing home runs as a bullpen is obviously huge because home runs late in the game, that's the easiest way to lose games. All right, last year they allowed a lot of home runs. That was really the most scary part of that bullpen. And then after that, it was the fact that they were the most used pen because they had so many injuries in the starting rotation. The rotation wasn't that good for a lot of the time, so they had to go to the pen so quickly, and the pen was just so overused. Well, right now, because the rotation's been so elite, and really because they go so deep into the game, like even when guys don't have their best days, you see this with Yamamoto so much. Clayton Kershaw years ago, created the standard. Like even on the days I don't have my best stuff, even on the days where I'll allow some earned runs, whatever, I'm still going to give you 5, 6, maybe even pitch into the seventh inning. Yamamoto does that a ton. Otani's even done that. Even guys like Sheehan and Sasaki have done that. Robleski consistently goes 6 or 7 innings. And like I said, because of that, the least amount of usage and the least amount of innings out of the bullpen, which will be massive. And then they also have turned around the home runs. All right, a lot of guys like Edgardo Henriquez, Will Klein, Tanner Scott, a lot of those guys have just not allowed that many home runs this year. Really, the only guy in the bullpen who will allow some home runs is like Jack Dreyer. Other than that, they keep the ball on the ground. They strike guys out. The bullpen overall, it's been more inconsistent than the lineup and the rotation, but overall, it's been very good, and it's been definitely the bigger surprise. The best pleasant surprise between those three parts of the team, the rotation, the lineup, and the bullpen. They've been very good, and a lot of the guys, it's not a surprise why in a second when I get to biggest pleasant surprise, a lot of the guys on the list will be relievers. All right, so let's get to the individual stuff. Biggest pleasant surprises so far in the Dodger season. At the top, pretty easy one for me. It's Justin Robleski. All right. 2.71 ERA is 10th best in Major League Baseball. Oh, by the way, he has the 14th best batting average against in baseball. All right. Never saw this coming. Definitely the biggest surprise of the season for this team. All right. He's been huge with Glasnow and Snell going down. I know that at some point he will regress. I don't think he'll have an ERA sub 3, but we are halfway through the Major League season and he has an ERA sub 3. He's pitched phenomenal. Whatever the word is that I'm trying to say, one of the lowest walk rates, attacks the strike zone, great fastball slider combination. The velocity has ticked up as of late, which even makes me more exciting that he could maybe sustain this. All right. He's just been huge. So valuable for the Dodgers with a couple of those starting pitching injuries. Top 10 in the league in ERA. The biggest surprise by far for this Dodger season, and they wouldn't be in this position without him. They would still be a very good team, but I think the division lead would not be as great, and they would be in a much worse spot without Robleski. All right, so I'm going to try to do each of these pretty quickly because I have to talk about a ton of players, but Robleski, biggest surprise. Let's go to the next guy that I have, Kyle Hurt. All right, kind of forgot about Kyle Hurt after so many years of him being injured. He was originally a starter. Finally, they moved him to just be a reliever full-time. Well, he's turned into a legit high-leverage reliever for Dave Roberts. All right, he has a dominant four-seam fastball, 200 batting average against with a 36% whiff rate on that pitch. He's got a 3.42 ERA with a 30.8% strikeout rate. So he's got a dominant strikeout rate. He misses a ton of bats, big-time swing and miss reliever with great velocity. All right, I love the fastball, changeup, slider combination. I don't tend to love pitchers who rely on changeups as relievers, but it works for him, and he does throw a ton of fastballs with good reason. He throws it at the top of the zone, very dominant, and one of the only needs for this Dodger team right now, you could argue maybe some outfielders at the deadline. Who knows where the rotation will be with, injuries always happen, but for me, it would be a right-handed reliever if they needed to go get somebody, and it could just end up being Evan Phillips. It could just end up being Edwin Diaz. But you know what? Kyle Hurts made a name for himself and legit high leverage guy that I believe will get some big outs in October. And if he continues this, he might be the go-to big high leverage guy late in innings. But, as the season progresses, he might, take a step back. But he kind of reminds me of a guy like Michael Kopech from 2 years ago, who wasn't necessarily like the high leverage guy of Blake Trinan or maybe even like Evan Phillips, but he is definitely a guy that you throw out there to miss some bats, and he's going to be pitching 6th, 7th, 8th inning, that kind of stuff. So I love me some Kyle Hurt. Will Klein, the next guy. All right, I figured there was a world where Will Klein could be a very good reliever, but he's been even better than I could have thought. That's why he's on this list. A 2.59 ERA with a very solid 25.4 strikeout rate. All right, he's elite at getting ground balls, and he also doesn't allow barrels. All right, doesn't necessarily get a massive amount of swing and miss, even though he's got a great fastball. In terms of velocity, he's got a pretty good sweeper. The walk rate has come down, where earlier in the year he wasn't allowing walks, but he's always been a guy who does allow walks. He's kind of like, to me, a perfect middle leverage reliever. Like, I don't think Klein is going to be pitching 7th, 8th inning in an October series, but like, you always got to have like, the trust tree, like the level of trust, the level of who would you prefer in certain situations, high leverage, middle leverage. To me, Will Klein is like a perfect 5th, 6th, 7th inning guy. Like, bottom of the order, he, gets some ground balls, he'll also get some strikeouts. But then also on top of that, if he had to pitch high leverage, I wouldn't be worried at all. I really like what he's turned into. All right, the next guy, Tanner Scott, kind of. All right, what I mean by that, and I have a couple other guys later into my categories that are similar to this. The reason I say kinda is because I expected him to be much better this year, but the reason he's still on biggest surprise is because I don't think I expected him to be this good. All right, he's been their best reliever. His slider has been one of the best pitches in baseball, 108 batting average against with a 40% whiff rate, 11th best strikeout rate among all relief pitchers, and the lowest walk rate. All right, he generates an elite amount of strikeouts, whiffs, chase, and he doesn't allow walks. He's been absolutely elite. All right, he's taken the great command he had last year, being in the strike zone more, but now he's brought up the swing and miss and the chase and the strikeouts. So he's not necessarily getting crushed in the zone like he was a year ago. He's actually thrown his slider more than his fastball this year, and like I said, it's been elite, and he's been dominant. He's been incredible. Much better against lefties, which was kind of a weird bugaboo for him last year. Just no way to explain it. He's just been way better, dominant, living up to the contract he got a year and a half ago. And he's been just so fun to watch. And, I think that when Edwin Diaz comes back at some point, he will be the closer. But Tanner Scott is just keeps humming along. And honestly, he deserves to be like an all-star at this point. But he has been amazing and one of the bigger surprise. And then the last guy I wanted to give some credit to before we go to biggest disappointments is Alex Call. All right, extremely limited playing time, but he has a 371 on base, which is pretty elite. All right, he's a big spark plug for the team. I wouldn't be shocked at all for this guy to have a big postseason moment, whatever that is, whether it's defense, running the bases, or it could just be like a big at-bat that leads to another big at-bat, with a walk, something like that. So it's funny. I just wanted to give him respect because I think he's been a very great bench player. I could have put him in one of my other categories is basically like this is exactly what I expected. I expected him to get on base and hit left-handed pitching, but he's actually played a little bit better and been a little bit more valuable than I probably would have even thought. So I wanted to give him some credit. All right, let's keep this moving because like I said, I do have a ton of guys to talk about. Biggest disappointments. All right, so we're going to be a little bit more harsh here. There's not a ton of guys to talk about. Obviously, when you have the best record in baseball, most guys on your team are playing pretty good. But the most obvious one is Kyle Tucker. All right, so he has a weighted runs created plus of exactly 100. So he has been exactly a league average hitter in his first year as the Dodger. All right, which is obviously disappointing. His career OPS is 861. This year it's at 707. All right. He now has 81 games left in this season to turn it around. There's no doubt in my mind that he can do it, but I've definitely lost a little bit of hope. He's had a very odd season. He just hasn't hit the ball as hard as he tends to. Not as many extra base hits. The slug is way down. Basically, the only thing he's continued to do is he does have good plate discipline and he will walk. He does have one of the higher walk rates on the Dodgers. Been kind of odd. He hasn't hit at Dodger Stadium. He has chased a little bit more this year, even though the chase rate and walk rates are still good. He just really hasn't hit the ball as hard as he had in the past, and it hasn't led to extra base hits, home runs. He only has 7 home runs this year. I don't like that he left the game with the back spasms because, if he goes on the IL, which is still possible, I don't think he will. I think he'll be in the lineup Friday in San Diego because I think he'll be fine, but if he does land on the IL, it almost like, completely just washes this first year. And it's like, injured season, bad season before he even got injured. And whenever he comes back, hopefully he can get hot. And really, it's just like, what can you do for us in the postseason at this point? But like I said earlier, he still has 81 games. Like, this is the way you got to think about it, all right? How many guys in the Dodgers, 81 games into the season, have had phenomenal seasons, like Shohei Ohtani, Max Muncy, Freddie Freeman, Andy Paz, all these guys? It's 81 games is what they've, all those stats they put up has been 81 games. Tucker now has those same 81 games to play as good as those guys, close to, better, whatever you want to say. He's got 81 games to turn it around. It's regardless of what he even does, it's probably going to be marked as a down year with the Dodgers. But he still has a ton of time. Like, he still has all of July, all of August, all of September. Like, you basically got 3 months, brother. 3 months to turn this around. You're not going to hit 30 home runs. You're not going to have an OPS over 900 or anything like that, like I predicted. But you still can have an OPS over 800. You still can hit 20-plus home runs. You still can have an on-base over 350. You could still do it. I still believe in you, Tucker, but it starts Friday night if and when you are in the lineup against the Padres. That's when your season starts Friday night. All right, so, but no way to explain it. He's been the most disappointing. The next guy I have is Emmett Sheehan. All right, a little bit shocking, but Emmett Sheehan has a 5.32 ERA this season, which is really, really bad. Okay, he still gets a ton of whiffs and a ton of strikeouts, but the problem is the home runs. All right, he has the 8th highest increase in opponent's slug from a year ago. So from last year, 2025, to this year, the 8th highest increase in opponent slugging percentage. Okay, I still believe Emmett can be good. I still believe he should be a part of the Dodgers' plan going forward. He's still very young. He still has a lot of potential. But no doubt, it has been a struggle for basically the entire season. He started to put things behind him like a month ago, but he's kind of regressed backwards again. And the fastball hasn't been as good. The velo hasn't been as good as it was a year ago. Like I said, he still gets whiffs and strikeouts, but he's kind of lost feel for some of his other pitches. Like, this was a guy who always had a great fastball changeup combination. He has not had that pitch like he had in the past. And yeah, he just gives up so many home runs now, and it's such a big issue for him. And he's got to get that figured out. So that's why he's on my list. Really disappointing that he has been this bad. I thought he was going to be great this year. So that's it. I still believe in Emmett Sheehan going forward, though. And then pretty much the last guy that we got to talk about, Mookie Betts. Again, kind of like Tanner Scott, kind of Mookie Betts. Now, if I just looked at his numbers right now and knew zero context of the season, I would definitely put him on here because he has an OPS of 705. All right, and this is a guy who in his career has an OPS of like 875 for his career. Okay, and he has an on base of 290. All right, under 300. But he did miss a month with the oblique, and he has been much better as of late. So his last 17 games, he's hitting 308 with a 365 on base, a 500 slug, and an 856 OPS. That is a WRC plus of 141. His last 7 games, 379 batting average, 438 on base, a 655 slug, and a 1.93 OPS. So he's been much better the last 2 to 3 weeks, looking a lot better. He still is playing amazing defense at shortstop, which again doesn't get talked about enough how amazing he is defensively. I feel very confident he's going to turn this around. I like what he's done the last week. A couple weeks ago he was getting not lucky, but a little bit fortunate with some balls that were getting through that weren't even hit that hard. Lately, he has been hitting the ball much harder, pull side homers, just looks way better. All right, and I think in this second half, he's going to be one of the stories of the Dodgers that he is going to turn this around and look much better and really just have much better offensive numbers. But something I've come to terms with Mookie Betts is that he doesn't need to be MVP Mookie Betts. This is a different version of Mookie Betts right now. He's playing an entirely new position. He no longer plays the outfield. He's a shortstop. Imagine telling someone in 2018, 2019, when Mookie Betts was one of the 3 best players in the game for the Red Sox. Imagine telling someone in 2020, 2021, 2022, when Mookie Betts was one of the 10 best players in the league for the Dodgers as a right fielder. Imagine telling them that he now plays shortstop. Okay, you would be like, what? That doesn't even make sense. And then imagine telling them that he's one of the better defensive shortstops. With that said, when you play elite defense at shortstop, you don't need to have an OPS of 900. You don't even need to have an OPS of like 850, which is like Mookie Betts has had way better seasons than that in his career. He's a Hall of Famer. What he really needs to do is have an OPS in the high 700s to low 800s, an OPS around or on base around 350. That's what he needs. All right. If he can have those numbers, if you can have a high 700 OPS with the defense he provides, you're going to still be one of the better shortstops in the game. If he can turn this around, like I said, the OPS is up to 705. He can get up to 800 in no time if he continues this hot stretch, because he still doesn't have a ton of plate appearances under his belt with the oblique injury that he missed. So I believe in Mookie Betts going forward. I think he's going to turn around. It would be huge for the lineup because so many of their best hitters are left-handed. You know, Shohei, Freddie, Max Muncy, you know, they really need him to break up some of those left-handed hitters. So hopefully he can keep this going forward. He's been great as of late, but obviously 705 OPS as it stands halfway through the season is disappointing. Next list I have exactly what we expected. All right, that's my title for this category. And I'll be pretty quick with these guys. All right, Shohei Ohtani, historic two-way season. I could have even put him on surprising because of how great his season has been. 963 OPS, 158 ERA. That's all I have to say. He's going to be a 5-time MVP after this year. Shohei Ohtani, that's exactly what we expected. Freddie Freeman, 139 WRC plus and 858 OPS. At 36 years old, he is still a top 25 hitter in the game according to OPS. All right, exactly what I expected from Freddie Freeman. Again, I could have even expected a little bit of a drop-off, but he hasn't even done that. All right, 139 WRC plus, exactly what we expected. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, this couldn't be more on the ball. Like, you know, bullseye, 265 ERA, all the numbers are fantastic. If it wasn't for some more historic seasons in the NL right now between Mizorowski, Christopher Sanchez, even Ohtani, he would be getting more Cy Young traction. He is the Dodgers ace alongside Shohei Ohtani. That's exactly what I expected from Yamamoto. Max Muncy, all right, one of the bigger surprises of the season is him becoming an elite defender. First in fielding run value among all third basemen. And it's not just like a fluke, because sometimes defensive metrics can be a little bit odd and they can be a little bit skewed. But if you've watched the games, like every game like I do, you could see the eye test. He's become a much better defender, and the numbers back it up. That's one of the more bigger surprises. But what's not surprising is that he has an 873 OPS. Not shocking at all. All right, when he's healthy, he absolutely rakes. He'll be starting the All-Star game at third base for the National League. One of the better hitters in the game. One of the more underrated players in the game. When you combine this, offense that he pretty much always puts up, it's even been a little bit better this year. With the elite defense, he's one of the more valuable players in the league according to F4. But when it comes to the bat, that's pretty much exactly what I expected from Max Muncy. Again, kind of similar to Freddie Freeman. I could even argue that it's a little bit better given his age, but it's just another Max Muncy season. Alex Vesia. All right, again, another guy that, basically the definition of this category, what I expected. Alex Vesia, once again, an ERA of 2.39, a 33.9% strikeout rate. His invisible fastball just never seems to fail him. He throws 92 miles an hour, and he has the 7th highest whiff rate in the game. Let me say that again. He throws 92 miles an hour, actually on average a little bit below that, 91.7. 92 miles an hour, only 6 men in the game get a higher percentage of swing and miss. That's crazy. Since the start of 2021, he's 11th in ERA and 7th in strikeout rate among all relievers. He's a dog. Exactly what I expected. All right, the next guy that I have to talk about is Andy Paz. I was a little confused on where to put him. All right, because I could have put him in surprising. I could have put him in one of my next categories, up and down, a little bit of a roller coaster. Because for a lot of the year, he's been one of the better, arguably the Dodgers' best player behind Shohei. And he's also been up and down because he's been very cold as of late. But because of where his numbers sit at right now, 792 OPS with 13 home runs, that is basically what I expected from Andy Paz. An OPS around 800, be on pace to hit 25 plus home runs. Basically the same season from a year ago. All right. A very streaky hitter. But he has gotten better and better at the big league level. He plays incredible defense in center field. He has been cold for a while. The last 30 games, 736 OPS. He's still on pace to have a very, very good season at 25 years old. He is kind of like at a crossroads section for me, because to me, the stretch he had to start the year, I was like, all right, Pages is on another level. This year, he's going to put up an OPS over 800, hit 30-plus home runs. Right now, this cold stretch kind of suggests that he might be on a very similar stretch to last year, where he's going to have a high 700s OPS, 25-plus home runs, which is fine. It's just not as much of a step up as I would have thought. But at the end of the day, pretty much exactly what I expected from Pages. His defense has actually been even a little bit better this year. He's been great out there. So that's why I have him on here. Another guy that I was kind of confused where I should put him, Miguel Rojas. If you look at his OPS, that's like 700, nothing crazy, but he has an 844 OPS versus left-handed pitching. He plays absolutely elite defense at second base at 37 years old. It's exactly what I hoped for and expected. That's why I have him on this list. Miguel Rojas is still a very valuable player. All right. Next category to go to, roller coaster. Okay, up and down. That's what I mean. And I pretty much just have two guys to talk about, Roki Sasaki and Dalton Rushing. All right, Rushing, I could have put him in surprising because he has been very good this year, but I'll get to him. Let's start with Roki Sasaki. Okay, I feel like he epitomizes the name of this category. 4.76 ERA in 68 innings pitched this year. Started off the year really, really bad, like horrific. But since the start of May 15th, he has a 3.67 ERA with a 29% strikeout rate. That's elite. With a 192 batting average against. Ever since he's mixed up his pitch mixed, the splitter, the slider, the fastball, he's been very, very better. The command, very much better. The command has vastly improved. The stuff actually continues to get better, where for a lot of the year he was averaging 97 miles an hour. Right now he's averaging more 98, 99. So the velocity's been a lot better. I'm a Roki believer. I feel like he is going to be very good in his career and going forward, but obviously he is the definition of a roller coaster, up and down. He epitomizes this category. And then the next guy, Dalton Rushing. All right, like I said, I could have put him in surprising because, I feel like overall he's had a very good season. As a backup catcher, he has a 799 OPS, and he's gotten much more playing time as of late. But in his last 30 games, he has an OPS of 561. All right, and like I said, much more playing time as of late with Will Smith's injury. Hot start to the year, cold right now, hence roller coaster. All right, I think he's a very good player, very young guy. He had a very hot start, but obviously he's still very young. Yeah, roller coaster, Dalton Rushing, Roki Sasaki. Let's go to the next guys. This is a very weird category. I couldn't come up with an exact name. I wasn't sure what to call this category, but these are kind of players who are kind of in the middle of everything. So they haven't shocked me in terms of my expectations. They haven't been disappointing, but haven't necessarily been over the top surprising. You'll see what I mean in a second. Teoscar Hernandez, okay, 784 OPS with much improved defense in left field. The chase rate has improved a ton this year, but he's also currently injured. And it's kind of like this is what I expected, but a little bit less than. I would have hoped for an OPS a little bit higher. But overall, he has had a pretty good offensive season, and obviously he's been hurt like basically the entirety of June. He's about to get reactivated. We'll see what he does for the remainder of the season. So that's why he goes into this category for me. Again, Will Smith. Definitely wish the offensive numbers were better, and all of his underlying numbers suggest that he's fine, and he's been a little bit unlucky. He still hits the ball hard. Expected numbers still look great. Chase numbers, all that stuff. But again, like Teoscar, he's currently injured. I think he'll be fine when he gets back in about a week. So two guys that have kind of just been like, whatever. Like, they haven't been bad, haven't been great. They're also dinged up right now. All right, next guy, Edgardo Henriquez. All right, I could have put this guy in a couple other categories, but he's got a 2.93 ERA. We know he's got some of the best stuff in baseball. He is starting to put it all together. His strikeout rate has gone up from 23% to 26%. Not on one of the biggest surprises yet. He's not on that list because he still hasn't reached his full dominant level that he could, reach. He's still climbing up there in terms of the reliever trust tree for the Dodgers. But again, I think he's been very good. Nothing insane. I still think that a lot of relievers have been better than him, but he has still been, pretty good. So that's why I put him here. Next guy, Blake Trinan. 3.52 ERA. He has gotten back to getting a lot of ground balls, and his strikeout rate does look better, but he definitely just doesn't have that elite feel to him anymore. He kind of seems more of a middle leverage reliever guy. Again, like if we're going into a postseason series, perfect spot for him would be like 5th, 6th inning, preferably against some right-handed hitters. He just doesn't have that elite feel to him anymore. He doesn't get the same amount of swing and miss strikeouts, that he used to get. Understandably, he's 37 years old. There's nothing wrong with him not being a high leverage reliever. A lot of other guys have, had an increase in production, so that's why they can live with it. He is also currently injured right now, so that's why he is here. All right, Alex Freeland. 664 OPS, obviously nothing to be excited about, but he has been much better since he was recalled a few weeks ago. He has an 835 OPS in his last 7 games. He plays elite defense at second base. I still think there's a really good player in there. But again, he hasn't blown me out of the water in terms of expectations. I don't think he's been too horrible. I think he's been fine. That's why he finds himself right here. Hae-Sung Kim, definitely made improvements at the plate, but obviously he is still kind of a weak bat. He's obviously down in the minor leagues. He got optioned. I think the Dodgers just don't believe in him too much going forward. He would probably benefit much more if he was on another team organization. He hasn't disappointed me, but he hasn't blown me out of the water. That's why he's right here. Jack Dreyer, another guy, just came back from the IL a couple weeks ago. 3.82 ERA. He has improved the swing and miss and the strikeout rate, which is what I asked of Jack Dreyer from a year ago. So that's great. But he does give up a lot of home runs, which does scare me, and is also why, again, on this pretty good bullpen, especially with the left-handed relievers they have, he would still be well behind Alex Vesia, well behind Tanner Scott in terms of trusted relievers. Again, another guy that 5th, 6th inning is where I would prefer him against some left-handed hitters. So he hasn't blown me out of the water, hasn't disappointed me. He's fine. All right, and then the last 2 guys, Jonathan Hernandez, whatever. Chucky Robinson, whatever. Small sample size. And then the last handful of guys before we wrap up, I have incomplete. These are obviously injured guys or guys that have just had a small sample size. Tyler Glasnow, Blake Snell. Glasnow would actually be on, what I expected guys. He would be on that list because he was having a phenomenal season, but he got hurt, which almost is expected. Blake Snell has pitched 5 innings all year. Edwin Diaz got hurt, obviously. Brock Stewart has barely pitched. Tommy Edman just made his return. He has actually been playing phenomenal, so that's great. Keep it up, Tommy Edman. Ryan Ward, he got called up for Teoscar Hernandez. He's probably, his days are numbered because he's probably about to get sent back down. And then Tommy Edman has also been playing some left field. And then Kike Hernandez literally played 2 games. So that is it. That is all the players that we've seen this year. That is all my thoughts. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was a long exercise. Overall, I think the Dodgers are in a great spot. They have been a little bit dinged up as of late. Hopefully Kyle Tucker can avoid the IL. Hopefully Teoscar Hernandez can get called up. The lineup would get a much-needed right-handed hitting boost. All right, so that's where we stand 81 games into the regular season. Leave your comments and your thoughts below. What do you guys think? Did I leave anybody out? Did I miss anyone? Do you guys disagree? Do you think that someone's been more disappointing than a couple of other guys? Other guys, did I, not mention some other guys that are more surprising? All that stuff. Leave your thoughts below. As always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of the videos dropping. Follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod. You can follow myself at Nick Talking Ball on X. The Dodgers will take on the Padres this weekend in San Diego. I will be back to recap that series on Sunday. Thank you guys so much for listening. This is Talking Blue. We will see you this weekend.